Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Thursdays wherever across this great country and this great land and this great world you may find yourself today. It's time for Outkick the Show. We got a bunch to get to, but we're going to start with the Titans and the Jags game beginning week 3 in the NFL today. Jalen Ramsey drama, Justin Trudeau's scandal, and the Antonio Brown decision that I think that Roger Goodell is going to be faced with, and why I believe it's going to be such a difficult decision for him. But we begin with the return of the NFL. Week 3 of the NFL is officially underway, and the Titans are on the road against the Jags. What do we expect to see in this game? Several different things that I think it's worth hitting. First of all, the game plan I don't think is going to be complicated for either side. The Titans are going to line up and try to stop Leonard Fournette and force Gardner Minshew to beat them in the passing game. The Jags are going to line up, try to stop Derrick Henry, and force Marcus Mariota to beat them in the passing game. Not a complicated game plan. You know exactly what to expect. I like the Titans here to win, and I also really like the under. So my plays tonight are the Titans and the under. A couple of other little details that I think are worth diving into. The game is massive for the Titans if they are going to contend in the AFC South, because they blew their chances against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday, as they always did. They're 3-19 in their last 22 and played awfully. The Titans have actually owned the Jags, relatively speaking. In the last 8 games, the Titans have outscored the Jags pretty substantially, and also they're 6-2 overall and 6-2 against the number. This line right around 1.5 or 2 for the Titans to be favored. The over-under 38-39 continuing to move around a bit. Last year in this game, this is the 3rd straight year it's been a Thursday night game, Derrick Henry went off, ran for 226 yards against the Jags, including a 99-yard touchdown. And so all of this is factoring in a big way. I like the Titans to cover, and I like the under in this one if you are going to bet it tonight. We're going to be talking about this game a decent amount, along with the rest of the NFL and the college football slate on Lock It In at 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. Now, Jalen Ramsey to me is an intriguing question as a part of this game. In particular, is it worth it to the Jags to play Jalen Ramsey if they are going to trade him? Now, Adam Schefter reported something funny. He reported that an NFL team reached out to the league office and said, if Jalen Ramsey plays on Thursday, is he also eligible to play on Sunday? And the league office was kind of funny. The league office shot back and said, no. If you play in a game on Thursday, you are not able to also play in a game on Sunday. You can only play in one game in a week. So I think this is intriguing, because if you are the Jags, why would you play Jalen Ramsey if you know you're going to trade him? Because if by chance he got hurt, you've killed your chance to trade him for this year. And you're also obligated to pick up his $13.7 million contract before you get the opportunity to trade him for a first-round pick or whatever you think you're going to be able to get from him. So, purely from a business perspective, it makes no sense whatsoever to play Jalen Ramsey. And some knucklehead just said, because they want to make the playoffs. I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, and we want to make the playoffs. If you want to make the playoffs, numbnuts, you wouldn't be trading the best corner in the league because he can't get along with your head coach in the first place. All right? If your goal is to make the playoffs, then you wouldn't be trading the best player on your team. Okay? Boom. There's your answer right then and there. If your goal is to make the playoffs as a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars, then you don't trade the best player on your team in the middle of the season, especially not early in the year. Okay? So that's your answer. That's why you sit Jalen Ramsey, because you're already punting on the playoffs if you're trading away the best player on your team. And I'm open for this, by the way. I'm open for this. When's the last time the Jags had a player better than Jalen Ramsey? When's the last time the Jags had a player on their football team better than Jalen Ramsey? A player who was the best at his position? Tony Baselli? I mean, I'm serious. It's possible that Jalen Ramsey is the best Jags football player of all time. And they are trading him away because he can't get along with his coach. I mean, think about this for a minute. There may be some Jags fans in there. Other than Tony Baselli, how many Hall of Famers are Jacksonville Jaguars? How many players that are in the Hall of Fame have played for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Maybe Fred Taylor's the best. Maybe Fred Taylor is the best Jag of all time. Maurice Jones-Drew is not better than Jalen Ramsey. The answer is maybe Fred Taylor. I think the best Jags football player of all time is probably Jalen Ramsey. Because right now he's headed towards an NFL career in the Hall of Fame. And I can't think of anybody else that's out there that would be better than him, and yet they have decided to trade him. So my point here is, from a pure asset perspective, it makes no sense whatsoever to put him out there and risk his injury when you're trying to get as much as you possibly can back in favor of him. And it doesn't make a lot of sense at all. Now, some of you are idiots, evidently, and you're like, why would they play him? Why wouldn't they play him? Because they're trying to maximize the business value of their asset. And if their asset is injured, he has absolutely no business value. And they have to pick up a fifth-year option, which costs them $13.7 million. And he doesn't play for them for the entire year. And they may not have a draft pick in time. So that is why I would not play Jalen Ramsey if I were running the Jacksonville Jaguars. But you know what else? I'd get along with Jalen Ramsey if I was running the Jacksonville Jaguars, because he's the best freaking player in the history of my organization. And he might be the best corner in the NFL. And so as a result, I would find a way to get along with the most talented guy that's ever been a member of my organization. He's better than Maurice Jones-Drew. I think he's better than Fred Taylor. He's better than Tony Baselli. He's better than Mark Brunell. He's better than David Garrard. He's better than Blake Bortles. There's a lot of sad sack crap in the Jacksonville Jaguar histories. All right, a couple of other things. This Antonio Brown dilemma continues to grow. And I've always said this, and I hope some of you have taken this to heart. The best way to prepare for being in a position of prominence or decision-making at some point in your life is to work on your decision-making while you aren't there yet. In other words, think about how you would solve problems if you were in an executive chair long before you had the opportunity to actually do it. It gives you reps mentally to help solve problems and work on your analysis of issues and your attempt to figure out the best solution. I do this all the time. I've been doing it for 20 years or more. I would encourage you guys to do it as well. Okay? So here is the dilemma that's likely to confront Roger Goodell. Reports are NFL investigators talked to Britney Taylor, the woman who accused Antonio Brown of sexual assault, rape, for 10 plus hours earlier this week. We don't know if the investigators have talked with Antonio Brown or anyone else, but at some point in the near future, they are going to walk into Roger Goodell's office and they're probably going to provide him with a written report analyzing what they found out in their investigation and laying out a suggestion to him, okay? If that occurs, there's going to be really two options for Roger Goodell when all is said and done. He can find that this woman's story is compelling and more likely than not to have occurred, and he can suspend Antonio Brown. Or he can decide he doesn't believe the woman's story based on what his investigators have told him, and as a result, there's unlikely to be a substantial suspension of Antonio Brown. Both of those options paint him and the league into a corner. Let me explain why. First of all, if he determines that there is truth to her claim that it is more likely than not that she was sexually assaulted by Antonio Brown, then so far as I know, the only punishment available to him is somewhere around 6 or 8 games. You cannot suspend someone you believe raped a woman for 6 or 8 games in the NFL season. Because immediately everybody is going to come out and they're going to say, wait a minute, you're telling me Tom Brady got 4 games for deflating footballs and Antonio Brown got 6 games for rape? Not going to fly. So if he decides that he's going to suspend Antonio Brown because he believes her story, here is my opinion of what Roger Goodell should do. He should suspend Antonio Brown for the rest of the season. Antonio Brown would then sue, say Roger Goodell doesn't have the authority to take this action under the personal conduct policy, under the CBA. And then this would turn into a lawsuit. But this preserves Roger Goodell's job because his action, he can say, we've never had a situation like this ever arise. And so as a result, we're going to suspend him for the rest of the season. And if he wins his grievance, he can come back with a lower level suspension. But I will have tried to do as much as I possibly could. Okay? If he determines that the woman's story is not true, then he's in a tough spot. Because he's got to come out and say, not only is there no grounds to suspend Antonio Brown, he's also got to say, I don't believe that woman. And that's a tough spot for Roger Goodell to get into because right now you're supposed to, by and large, say all the time, yes, we believe all women, even if we all know that sometimes, just like men, women lie. But Roger Goodell is painted into a corner because if he doesn't suspend Antonio Brown, then he's effectively calling this woman a liar and saying she was never raped and it was a consensual relationship. There's no reason whatsoever for him to be in this relationship, but he created this dilemma by initially beginning the personal conduct policy in the grand ridiculousness that was Roger Goodell a decade ago. Why doesn't he say leave it to courts? Because he instituted the personal conduct policy, which specifically takes issues such as these out of the court of law. So this is the challenge that is going to present itself during the course of the proceeding. People say, well, due process. That specifically is what the personal conduct policy doesn't allow. It doesn't allow due process through the criminal justice system or the civil justice system. It requires the NFL to conduct their own investigation and render their own judgment. It's why it makes absolutely no sense in the grand scheme of things. Okay, let's talk about Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is the left-wing, wokest leader in the history of the free world. He's always apologizing for all the things that white people have done wrong. He's constantly genuflecting at the altar of white guilt. He's constantly, annoyingly, cloyingly woke. And now it has come out that Justin Trudeau dressed up in brownface as Aladdin. He also dressed up in blackface to sing Deo, and he dressed up in blackface another time, which they now have video of, and they don't even know why he did that for sure. Not only did he dress up in blackface, but he went all in. He put his hands black. He put his legs black. This man went all in the dress-up game. He tried to answer questions. I watched his press conference, and I thought it was utterly ridiculous. Now, unlike a lot of people, I am actually consistent in the way I respond to this cancel culture BS, right? I think it is ridiculous that the SNL fired that comedian because somebody went through some podcasts and they decided that they didn't like some of his jokes that he had made on the podcast. I think it was ridiculous that Kevin Hart didn't get to host the Oscars because people went through his old tweets and they decided that some of his jokes were unacceptable. I think it's ridiculous that we live in an era where people are trying to cancel out other people all day long, all the time. And I also think it's ridiculous that the standard that gets applied is not consistent in any way. If you are woke, You get away with this stuff more often than not. If you are middle of the road or conservative, you get pilloried at the social media stake and you lose your jobs. Just imagine for an instant the reaction there would be in the United States if there had been photos and video of Donald Trump dressed up in black and brown face. People would lose their ever-loving minds, okay? Justin Trudeau had to know these pictures were out there. He had to know these videos were out there. We had the situation with the governor and the attorney general down in Virginia, and I guess he thought he was just going to get away with it. I'm stunned that he could run for the presidency or prime ministership of Canada, and none of these photos ever came out the entire time that he was running. How is this possible? Wouldn't you immediately think of this kind of situation if somebody were running for like the leadership of the country? Now, I don't believe he should resign, all right? I'm saying this straightforward. I don't think he should drop out of the re-election campaign. I think voters should decide what they believe, okay? Whether they want to hold him to the standard that he would hold others. I think what happens most of the time, and why I believe so much of this cancel culture BS is ascendant right now, is because people are afraid to say to the mob, you know what, he screwed up, but we're not changing our mind. Like, why couldn't Lorne Michaels say, you know what, I don't agree with every joke this guy's done, but he's pretty funny, and we think he deserves a chance to be at SNL. Do you know what the mob would do? They would move on. The mob is lazy, it's angry, but it has a really short memory. There's always somebody else new that they're going to move on and try to cancel. And the way to wipe out cancel culture is because you need to stand up and say, don't actually allow the cancel culture people to believe that they have a voice. Because what you will find over and over and over again is when the mass public votes, the public doesn't care. The public doesn't judge you by your worst moment. Let elections decide outcomes. Don't let people who are angry and embittered and trying to gain power do it instead. Remember when the Donald Trump tape came out, the Access Hollywood tape, and everybody said, oh, Donald Trump is done. There's no way he has a chance now. And then he ended up getting elected president of the United States. Do you know how many times they said, the media did, Donald Trump's career is over? You can't say that in a political campaign and still get elected president. What Donald Trump punctured was the illusion that the media gatekeepers mattered, and that the way they keep score and that the way they assess what's positive and what's negative and what's possible and what's impossible was made up. It was like the Wizard of Oz. And suddenly people went back and they yanked open the curtain and they realized who the Wizard of Oz was. And the Wizard of Oz, ever since that unveiling, the media has been triggered by Donald Trump. Because really what he challenged more than anything else was their power, their ability to be the gatekeeper, their ability to determine what is acceptable and unacceptable in America today. And so I don't think that Justin Trudeau should step down. I don't think that he should do anything other than apologize if he believes he's behaved in an inappropriate manner. He should let the people of Canada decide whether or not his behavior is acceptable and whether or not they believe that he's an authentic, reliable, reasonable person. And if they do, then he can get reelected and he's completely cleansed. And if he loses, you know what? He can go on to the rest of his life. But I don't like this universe that we live in where everybody out there is constantly trying to play gotcha journalism and go grab some joke that somebody made or go grab something inappropriate that somebody said decades ago and hold it up and say, you deserve to be canceled now for this. And I have defended left wing, right wing, middle of the road. I'm consistent on this. I think that you should be judged by what you do right now if you are a public figure, not by what you did 20 years ago, not by what you did 30 years ago, by what you're going to do right now, and I think that should be the standard. And I also think we should stop being perpetually outraged by everything. People do dumb stuff. Every single person watching and listening to this at some point in time has done something stupid in their life. Probably something that you hope nobody else will ever know about. And right now, in the public arena, what we look for all the time is the worst thing that somebody did decades ago, and we try to hold it up as representative of why they shouldn't have the prominence that they have right now in society. And I think as a result, do you know what we do? We turn off a lot of people who might be really good at engaging in the political process because they say, you know what, this just ain't worth it. When I was in my 20s, I did stupid stuff. When I was in my 30s, I did stupid stuff. When I was in my 40s, whatever age these people are, there are a ton of people out there who'd be great politicians. And they say, you know what? There's too much stuff in my background. If anything, I would like to think that Trump is the cure for that. If Donald Trump can get elected president on his third wife with all the scandal that he's been involved in over the years, to me, it at least opens the possibility that a lot of people who believe they were unelectable, who might have great ideas, should actually know that they are electable. But again, I'm not the kind of person who goes after Justin Trudeau. I would like for Justin Trudeau to think about this in his own life, the Canadian Prime Minister, and think about how he would respond if one of his opponents had this happen to him. And I bet he wouldn't be anywhere near as generous as he's asking the Canadian people to be for him right now. So it's an amazingly interesting story. I am intrigued to follow it, but I don't believe that you should resign when these type stories arise. I think you should let the American people or the Canadian people, as the case is right now, determine whether or not they believe you are still fit to be a leader. I don't like the idea of running and hiding. I don't like the idea of apologizing and then disappearing. I think you should have to stand up, face the music, determine what the Canadian people believe is appropriate for your future as a politician. All right. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'm on the under and I'm on the Titans tonight. We'll be talking about it on Lock It In about an hour on FS1. This is Outkick the Coverage. My name is Clay Travis. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for hanging out with me. I will see you on television in a little while and on the radio tomorrow and probably on here tomorrow as well. See y'all. Bye. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.